Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, and my friends, this is the beginner's guide to Under Night In-Birth 2 Celes. And we're going to be covering all the mechanics that make this game go. So just like any fighting game, yeah, we got a lot of the basics here, a lot of things you would expect, but Under Night In-Birth specifically has a lot of very unique mechanics to it, not the least of which that blue glowy thing you're seeing right now, that make the game very different than other fighters that you may find. So, as with all these beginner guides that we do on the channel here, there's timestamps everywhere. Skip to whatever makes sense for you. If you could though, leave a like, it does help the video quite a bit. And we're going to be covering everything you need to know about the game so you can dig in. This is a new big proper sequel. There's Rollback Netcode built from the ground up. There's crossplay between PlayStation and PC, so it's a really good time to get into the Under Night franchise. Now that said here, we got to start somewhere, so let's start with just the absolute basics before we work our way into the more advanced concepts of the game. So Under Night In-Birth 2 is an anime fighter, most assuredly, you can tell just by looking at the game, although maybe not as wild as some other games you might label as anime fighters. It's almost a little bit more the Street Fighter of anime fighters, if you will. Now, as far as the game goes, we would call this a 4-button game. There's 4 main buttons, basically. That's why it's a 4-button game. We have A, B, C, and D. So A, B, C, these are your attacks. Effectively light, medium, heavy. So A is light, B is medium, and C is heavy. And D is sort of a utility button. It does a lot of little different things depending on what direction and D you are hitting. This is the type of game where you can chain your normals together, so A can go into B, can go into C, and we'll talk about it more later in the video. But also you can get much more free form with it than say the usual anime fare, because A can go into B, can go into C, but C can go into B, can go into A, and C can go into A, can go into B, and basically you can kind of mix and match however you want. However you want to chain your buttons together, as long as you're simply just not repeating the same button, it all works out. Also, for people that are newer to fighting games, there is effectively what we call an auto combo system. We call this smart steer. If you just smash light over and over again, as long as you have appropriate amount of meter, the game will give you some kind of combo going on. So don't worry about that. So if you just want to mash a little bit, just keep mashing light, the game will figure out a few combos for you. And like many anime fighters, you can dash. If you hold your dash, you can run. You can backdash. Some characters are a little bit more mobility impaired, like the big boys, like Waldstein. But for the most part, just about everyone can run, everyone can backdash, all that. So general grounded mobility is quite fast. Now, unlike some other anime fighters, you're not really going to find much in like the way of like super jumps or stuff like that. Or air dash, well, sort of, but we'll talk about that. It's its own dedicated mechanic. It's not just necessarily built in as an air dash, but yeah, so that's sort of the absolute basics. And you see me keep glowing, don't worry, we're going to get into it. What you see here in the middle, GRD grid, this is one of the most important parts of the game. It'll have its own section. So besides that, just a couple other quick notes here. It's a back to block game, like most fighting games. Hold back to block or hold down back to block crouching. Air blocking is very rare. There's only a few situations where you're allowed to air block. Most situations you are not. And besides that, we're going to cover more of the mechanics here in our dedicated offense and defense sections. So let's talk the basics of offense here. Now, sure enough, just like any fighting game, yeah, we already got the normals, A, B, C, as we went over here. And of course, everyone has all sorts of special moves. Depending on the character, they can get pretty wild and pretty weird because, well, that's just how fighting games go. To note, for the characters that can run, there is unique dashing attacks. So for B and C, you're medium and heavy. If you run and hit B or C, you will get a special attack as appropriate per the character. Every character has their own different unique attacks when it comes to dashing and running. Certain characters also can charge their attacks. This is character to character, but it's really as simple as just either tapping the button or holding the button and obviously getting more damage and changing the properties of the move. Either it could be more advantage on hit, more advantage on block, so on and so forth. This is character to character. Not everyone has it, but it is common enough to mention. Now, when it comes to special moves, just a note here, you have basically 2 main special moves and your EX special move. So Hyde, he's kind of like the generic, Shoto, he's the Ryu, if you will, of the game. And, he's got fireballs and stuff, right? So let's take that fireball. So we have cortical forward A, slower, cortical forward B, a little bit faster, and cortical forward C, which as you see here, a little bit of flash, takes meter, and your meter here, 200%. It takes 100% of your meter, which is only half, because anime logic, right? But yeah, it takes half your bar, so you have basically the light version, the medium versions, and an EX version of the move. And when you hit the C version of a move, if you do not have the appropriate amount of meter, it'll simply do the B version of the move instead. Now, again, characters are unique in this game, right? Everyone's got their own sets of normals, their own sets of specials. That's what makes fighting games go. But one thing we have here is what we call the force function. So this is you hitting your medium and heavy buttons together at the same time. And this is another specifically unique character-to-character move. So for Hyde here, it's a big old sword swing. And you can charge it, because it's a character that can charge his moves. And specifically, the charged held version is also an overhead. It has to be blocked standing. So that's really cool. Now, conversely, our force function here for Waldstein, our big boy, it's a projectile. He just whips a big rock at you. And not necessarily best in class projectile or anything, but considering he's a big boy, he's not particularly fast, right? So this gives them a little bit of ability to control the screen. There is a downside of these moves, because these moves are wildly powerful moves. So we're going to get more into the grid system later in the video, but notice the little bar is filling up in the middle, right? So these are important. You generally want more of them rather than not, but if you do your force function, it'll take some of your grid bars, which, you know, can be bad. But once again, this is a powerful attack that gives you traits you might not otherwise have, so that's the payoff. We'll get more to it in the grid section of the video. But basically, whatever character you may be, hit your medium and heavy at the same time, and you'll get something cool and something different, like say, just straight up flying in the air, right? That's pretty different. So they do change the course of the match pretty wildly. Now, I did mention it's a 3-button game, ABC, light, medium, heavy, but don't mistake that for a lack of offense or a lack of options, because all the characters have all sorts of command normals. So like stand B, forward B, stand C, forward C, so on and so forth. If we go into our move list here, you can see characters, when it comes to just like command normals, all sorts of options, right? Like it's character to character, obviously, but there's a lot of stuff, so please check your move list, because you might have a lot more moves than you think. So another thing, there's throws, and throws about what you would expect. You know, a staple of any 2D fighting game is the throw. The one thing that's a little different is in this game, you can actually like chain into throw. So I can go like stand light into throw. The one difference here, you might notice there's a little bit of a golden aura. So the window, when you see any kind of golden throw, is a lot easier to tech. So just like most 2D fighters, techs for throws, you kind of have to be a little predictive. But for this, if you see that big gold flash, you have a very long time to tech the throw. But then again, it's basically the penalty. Were you asleep at the wheel? Because since you have a lot of time, if you go for this and you don't tech that throw, you're going to be eating so much throw damage in situations where you might not otherwise would. Because every character can effectively do like a grappler tick throw, where I can hit you with a jab, go directly into throw on your block, and still throw you. So basically, pay attention, because if someone's prone to do this, got to keep your buttons ready on that throw tech. And of course, we have the meter. So as you can see here at the bottom, 200% anime logic, right? It's 100%, but whatever. You have 2 sections, right? So it takes one section of your meter, half your meter, to do an EX move. All of your special moves, whatever they may be. If you do the C version, it'll take half that bar and do an EX version of the move. And naturally, the EX versions are much more visually impressive, do more damage, all the things you would expect. If you do half circle forward and D, this will give you your stock super move. So this is a universal mechanic for your super across all players, all characters. It's always the same motion, so you don't need to learn different super motions for the different characters. It's always half circle forward and the D button. And this, naturally enough, will take all of your super meter. And don't worry, there's a lot of ways to play with super meter in this game, as we'll get into some of the unique mechanics, so don't feel bad about spending that meter. You're going to get a lot of it. So your supers, by the way, are called your infinite worth, and we have a desperation super. So if you happen to be low health, 30% or less, if you hit A plus B plus C plus D at the same time, hit all your buttons at the same time, we'll go into our desperation super, our infinite worth EX. And The animations are suitably much more dramatic, they do a lot more damage, and are just kind of better all around for the most part. They take the exact same amount of meter, they're just only really available to you when you're low health. So this is effectively the comeback mechanic. Different character to character, everyone has different properties. The one thing is your infinite worth and your EX infinite worth, they're always going to be invincible startup. So for characters that have not as great defensive options, you can always rely on these to invincible through an opponent's move, and basically just mash, 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 and hope it works out. Okay, so now let's talk defense. There's a few boring aspects, but we gotta cover them just so you know what's up, right? There's all sorts of text in the game, so if you get hit or you get knocked down or whatever, right? Just simply hit buttons, and you can air recover, and depending on directions you hold while you're air recovering, you can say go forward or backwards, right? Much the same on the ground. You touch the ground, when you get smacked, be it getting a combo or just any kind of knockdown, hit a button, you can wake up in place. Say if you hold backwards, you can gain some spacing while you're attacking. It's the kind of usual fare, but you do need to know it. Now, another important defense mechanic here, we talked about the D button before and how it has many different uses. One of those main uses is back end D, which is your shield. So it's basically a superior version of blocking, and it gets you quite a bit. So not the least of which here is if the enemy is attacking while you have a shield up, well then you'll gain just a little bit more meter. And as you kind of reapply it here, you can kind of let go and just keep tapping it. As you notice, you're glowing pretty severely here. And while this is happening here, you're also gaining a pretty gigantic amount of that grid meter in the middle there. And more importantly, you are taking the enemy's grid meter away every time you shield their attacks. So if you have an enemy who's just going for like bargain basement offense, like just super easy to read offense, you can titanically gain from that and actually kind of cripple their potential offense by stealing their grid meter. Also, correctly shielding will create a bit more distance between the two characters than normal. So if you're just looking for like some space to breathe, this is a really good way to do it. And also, any attack that is successfully shielded, you take no chip damage from at all. So, hey, handy. Another important defense mechanic in this game is the guard thrust. So this goes by a lot of different names in a lot of different games. I like defaulting back to the original. I just like calling it the alpha counter. But basically, this is your get off me move. So while you're already blocking, you have to be blocking, you can't be hit. Hit forward and A plus B plus C. You can set that to a macro, or you can just hit the buttons together, doesn't matter. It'll take half of your super meter, 100% of the meter, although which is 50% of the meter, because, yeah. Anyways, this will push them all the way back, and it's nice and invincible while you're doing it, so you can't get hit out of it. It's a decent amount of meter to put into it, but if you just need room to breathe, this gives you exactly that. Okay, so now let's talk some mechanics here. Let's talk the assault. So assault is forward and your D button. And assault is basically a jump. Not quite your regular jump here. And assault's much lower to the ground versus a regular jump. And therefore, consequently, much more difficult to react to. If you ever played King of Fighters or something like this is effectively a short hop. It's a way to be offensive in the air without necessarily having to commit to a full jump. So in and of itself, that kind of sells itself, right? The thing about the assault is you can also do it while in the air. So this is what effectively gives you, I guess you can call it an air dash, a double jump, whatever, right? But this is what gives you just a bit more air mobility. So you can do this while jumping forward, you can do it while jumping backwards and regain the space. Whatever you want to do, you can kind of work your way in. This is purely an aggressive mechanic. That's why it's called assault. So if you're looking to get a little unga bunga, this is the button for it. A thing to note though, specifically, if you're doing the grounded version, the short hop version, you're not allowed to say do chains into it. So say I do a regular jump, I can go like something like AB. There you go, 2-hit combo, right? AB. That just simply will not work. I cannot go AB while I'm doing the grounded version of assault. So I have to pick a button and like it. Much the same, say I do like a jump into a special move. Here, I cannot do that. I can do the move, or I can do the special, but I cannot do both. So there is one small penalty to pay for a grounded assault. You're much lower to the ground. It's really good. It's really helpful, but you can't go all whole hog on the offense. You got to pick and choose what you want. Also, I know we keep hinting at it here, but the grid system at the bottom there, every time you do assault, it will give a substantial boost to your grid. So you're rewarded for your offensive potential. Now we have another mechanic to talk about, the creeping edge. This is just down, forward, and D. And if the assault was the King of Fighters short hop, then the creeping edge is the King of Fighters roll, and it works much the same way. So you have a window of invincibility while you're doing this, and you can use this to just simply bypass anything coming your way and work your way in without having to commit to a jump or commit to the assault. Now, whereas the assault adds to your grid gauge, this actually takes away from it. There is a defensive cost to it, so therefore it actually will drain your grid gauge just a little bit. However, if you successfully go through a move, you will instead gain grid gauge. So if you actually make the right call and go through whatever attack it may be while doing this move here, then you are rewarded for it more than just getting in. You're also rewarded for it with some meter. So basically, the creeping edge, if you're actually smart and use it correctly, it's all upside. So that's really handy. So if you're struggling to get in, this is another way to help you get in. Now, to add though, like so many games with this style of mechanic, it doesn't necessarily get you out of jail versus throws. So watch out for that. You're invulnerable to strikes, but you're not invulnerable to grabs. Alright, it's finally time to talk of the grid. That's the little thing that's building up in the middle of the screen. What is the grid? It's one of the most key mechanics of the game, actually. In essence, it's a glorified tug of war, I guess. You're both building up your little diamonds in the bottom, and if one person, when the clock counts down, has just even the slightest of leads, when that time comes and the clock runs out, as you can see it's building up here, whoever wins that tug of war now has the grid won, and they're in Vorpal, which I know is a term, but trust me, it's important. So much of this video, you're seeing someone turning blue, just because that's how it is, right? So this is the Vorpal state, and at bare minimum, what the Vorpal state is more damage. It's just all upside. If you won the grid battle, then you're given the Vorpal bonus, and you get the damage bonus. So let's take something pretty innocuous here. We're just going to go stand heavy. So stand heavy does 690 damage. And if we have Vorpal up, now it does 759. For the most part here, when you have the grid bonus, you're just going to do 10% more damage across the board, or whatever you may see. You can even see it here just on your combo counters. You can see here, oh, we got our damage in, and also in the blue, that's our bonus Vorpal damage, just because you won your special, so you get this little taste here, this little extra benefit. There's more to it, but let's just talk about how do we get here. So basically, almost anything you do will build it. Attacking the enemy, the act of walking forward will build it. Conversely, the act of retreating, walking backwards will actually drain your grid bars. So if it's building up a bit here and you walk backwards and you be overly defensive, it will drain while your opponents will rise up. So this is incentivizing you being extra aggressive in this game. Like if you got to go backwards to not die, hey, by all means, right? But if you're looking to win the grid tug of war, you should be going forward, 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 attacking, attacking, attacking. As mentioned earlier in the video, if you do the assault, your short hop, forward and the D button, that will also build the grid bar. Good, handy. You can also hold D, no direction, just hold it. And while you're holding it, you'll strike a pose and you'll charge the grid gauge. And specifically, on top of charging your gauge, you'll also deplete the enemy's gauge. So the grid bars only count every time the circle fills up. So if you're just looking to steal the victory at the last possible second, maybe hit the D button, charge up, drain their bar, add to your bar, and then you'll get the Vorpal bonus. Also, while you're in Vorpal, we talked about force functions, your medium and heavy button together. It does still take meter in the grid, but it takes about half as much meter as it did before. So you're a little bit more incentivized to use these special moves, as it won't necessarily benefit the enemy as much. And new to this game specifically, if you happen to win the grid by a substantial amount, specifically 6 or more grids, like your little icons here, you get a special kind of Vorpal. You get Celestial Vorpal, and it's just effectively just better across the board. As that bonus damage you get significantly more bonus damage. So if you can win big time, then the rewards will also be big time. So, okay, damage bonus, pretty cool, right? So that alone incentivizes you to win the grid every time the circle comes up. But the real big bonus is this. is the fact that you can cash out. So when you're in Vorpal, and only in Vorpal, you can do a new mechanic called the chain shift, where you hit the D button twice, and then it'll basically drain everything you've earned, and then cash it out directly into your super meter. So whatever you have currently built up, as long as you're in Vorpal, hit the button twice, DD, and boom, cash out, get that meter. So say if you only have 3 bars, then you're going to get a fair amount, but basically the more and more and more you have, the more and more and more you're going to cash out by. So if you happen to have, say, a substantial amount built up, when the time the grid is up, and then you cash out here, DD, you can get, well, a lot of meter, as you can see, right? So this is what I mentioned earlier in the video. Don't be afraid to spend that meter, because if you win the grid, whatever you win by, you can cash out, and then you have that much more meter to work with, therefore that much more EX moves, more super moves, so on and so forth. And that's not all. So the chain shift, on top of just cashing out whatever you have stocked up on the grid for meter, it's also a cancel. So say I do quarter circle forward punch, right? When I'm doing that, I can do my chain shift, cancel out of my move, and either I can link in the moves that are not possible, I can get combos that are not possible, or I can make unsafe moves on block safe on block. Now to note, it doesn't work on every single special move in the game, but it does work on a lot of special moves in the game, right? So effectively look at it like a free cancel with all the benefits you would expect on offense and on defense. And we're still not done yet, because chain shift has one more bonus. It also has invincible startup. So if you have the grid up and you're saying knocked down for whatever reason, you can use it to invincible through whatever's coming your way on wake up. Or it could be jumping, or it could be whatever, right? All you need to know is the startup of the chain shift is just 100% invincible. So in situations on defense, it'll let you just have time to block and see what's going on. Or say you're lucky enough to have the right moves. You can go right into something invincible if you see something coming and blast right through the enemy's offense, right? So there's a lot of feedback loops here. You win the tug of war. If you win the tug of war, you get the buff state. Great. You can cash out the buff state for meter, and the act of cashing out is also invincible. So basically, there's a lot of incentive for you to win the grid. It's one of the main core aspects, one of the main core mechanics that is at the heart of this game. All right, so now we went from one major mechanic in the grid system. Let's go to another one, the veil off. So if the grid system is a very elaborate way to build up your meter, the veil off system is a very elaborate way to spend your meter. So what is the veil off? Well, it is you hitting A, B, C at the same time. And when you have at least 100 meter, then you can cash in all that meter for the veil off bar. As you can see here, draining. And what happens while you're in the veil off state? Well, one, you get a damage boost. So say stand heavy here for Laundrekia, that is 680 damage. And if we do it while in veil off, 816, pretty substantial. It's actually 20%. And by the way, it does stack with the grid damage boost as well. So if you're in veil off and you have the grid bonus, Vorpal, you'll do 30% more damage across the board. And that's substantial. That's game winning. So just by playing through, I don't want to call them a mini game necessarily, right? But by using these mechanics properly over the course of the fight here, if I know I'm going to win the grid and I know I have enough meter to cash out here for the veil off, all of a sudden every hit just does titanically much more damage. So these are some things you should be aiming for. So more things about the veil off. This is another source of invincibility. So you can use this as a wake up reversal, force the enemy off of you. That's great, that's handy. Don't get blocked, because it's not very good on block, but a universal reversal for the characters that don't necessarily have, good uppercuts or that kind of stuff. You can also combo into it as long as you're in the Vorpal state, and as you can see, it just kind of pops the enemy up, so it's effectively a combo extender. But I guess let's stop bearing the lead here. So while that bar is up, you can do all sorts of EX and super moves, right? But you can do, say, multiple. So normally if I wanted to do one EX And my super, well, that's simply, too much meter, right? That effectively beats 300% meter. 100 for the EX, 200 for the super. But while in Veil Off, moves have a slight discount. So that's one good thing. So say with my 130 meter, I could get 2 EX moves out. Really handy, right? So you can overspend meter you do not have. Even if you have just one little tick left, you can do, well, anything, including supers. So even though the super obviously costs a lot, even if you have just one little piece left of that Veil Off meter, you can do whatever you want. So it's really handy in that way. So obviously you'll benefit some characters more than others. That's how fighting games go. But yeah, it lets you overspend meter you don't have. So it lets you utilize your meter more efficiently. It's also a combo mechanic, and it's also an invincible defensive mechanic. So there's a lot to love here, frankly. Now, just to mention some things about combos and offense flow and all that kind of stuff. So pretty much every move in the game is jump cancelable. So whatever it may be, crouching attack, standing attack, whatever it may be. Some games, they're very precious and very rare about what they'll let you be jump cancelable or not. In this game, basically everything's jump cancelable. So just so you know. So if you want to keep that flow going, there you are. To note though, that is on hit specifically. If the moves are blocked, you cannot jump cancel those moves, FYI. And yeah, as far as offense goes, chains are easy. A lot of lights tend to chain in themselves, like say your crouching light attack. So good for hit confirms, all that kind of stuff. Obviously ABC, that all works. And we mentioned earlier in the video, reverse beats the thing. So you can go ABC, you can go CBA, you can go CAB, BAC, like whatever combinations you want, and you can mix and match all the various crouch attacks as well with standing attacks. The only thing you can't do is just do a duplicate. So you can't do, say, stand C twice in a row, but you can go A, crouch C, stand B into crouch A, whatever you may want. It's very, very free form like that. So the main thing limiting your pressure and combos and all that kind of stuff is your imagination. Just like any game you would expect for combos, there is damage scaling. So say stand heavy to 680, but if it's the second hit of my combo, it'll now do less damage, 455, third hit, 400, and so on and so forth, right? The more hits you do, the less damage each successive hit will do. And also, you may notice when I'm hitting the enemy, that little bar that drains here, that is your hit stun decay gauge. And basically, you can keep comboing the enemy over and over and over until that runs out. It's quite simple as that. Any combo you start with a light, specifically, your hit stun decay gauge will be shorter than it otherwise would. So, long story short, you're just not going to get as big of a combo if you start with a light. That's kind of the penalty, right? It's easier to start a combo with lights because you can start with like 4 crouch lights that have to be crouch blocked. Makes it very easy, right? So, therefore, you won't get quite the same damage combo, quite length of combo as well. Conversely, if you start a combo with a counter hit, your gauge will actually be a little bit higher for hit stun decay than it normally would, allowing you to get bigger and longer combos. Also, on top of lights, anything you start with an assault will also give increased hit stun decay, simply because off an assault, once again, just like lights, it's easier to start a combo off an assault. Therefore, your combo will be just a little bit smaller, do a little bit less damage. The game is incredibly freeform in what it allows for combos. Basically, once again, as long as that gauge is not empty, you can hit with whatever your next hit's going to be. So you can get very creative with normals into specials, back into normals, back into whatever you may think, because that's just the game. And that is your beginner's guide to Under Night In-Birth 2. This is meant to give you just kind of, I know there's a lot of mechanics to talk over, but still just a light little dip into the game to help you understand how everything works. A lot of the core game is just kind of fighting games 101, right? Spacing's important, footsies are important, just control of neutral is important. But then again, things like assault let you get a little crazy, and the grid system, the veil off system, these are what really make the game the game. So mastering these mechanics will certainly help you out. That all said, hope this video helped you out. If this video did, hey, leave a like, it helps out a lot, and otherwise, well, we're at the end of the video. So, thank you very much for watching, hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Under Night In-Birth.